Hello? Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey sinners, it's your fucking prophet speaking. God says that we actually came from her vagina, not Adam's rib. God wants us to address her as that bitch now in all prayers and legal documents. Did you know that John has a twink on the side? Olivia doesn't even know. Oh my god, I heard that they're swingers. She practically propositioned me in the church parking lot. Having gained an angel, more like hell gained a bitch.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pouting. I'm your prophet and host, Tara, and I'm excited for today's episode. It's just me. It's for all of us who stood in the church gym and ate Costco cheesecake and wondering, is this what God really wanted for this person's big day? So if you already guessed it, we're diving into the unique world of Mormon wedding receptions and bridal showers. I was going to do bachelorette parties as well, but I feel like the general consensus was that most did not have a bachelorette party. And if they did, it was just like a very casual girls' night. But we're going to get into it and talk all about it. We're diving into the gifts that you receive and all of the cringy, fun, crazy aspects of Mormon weddings. But before we dive into all of that, I just wanted to give a little update on my life. So stick around to get into the Mormon wedding reception part of this episode, because I also will have some juicy stories from listeners to share, which I'm so excited for. But little life update. I am still in Kyrgyzstan. I wanted to give a little update because I feel like there's quite a few new listeners, and I've gotten some DMs and questions about what the heck are you doing in Kyrgyzstan? So it never hurts to go over that again. So I have been in Kyrgyzstan now for 4 months. My husband is a foreign service officer, and that's what led us to move here. I've been talking a lot more about it on my social media page just because it's been a lot of fun. Like this past weekend, me and my 2 boys went yurt camping at Lake Issyk, which was so fun. We were only there for one night, which I felt like was perfect, especially since it was just me and them and another group of people from the embassy. But it was so fun just to go and drive through Kyrgyzstan, which I feel like it looks a lot like Utah, surprisingly. Very surprised at how the landscape, I even saw like red rocks and stuff, was very similar. And the weather so far has also been very similar to Utah as well. And me and my boys had so much fun. I felt like it was so cool to be able to do that because old Tara, like legitimately, I feel like 6 years ago was at the height of right before I left Mormonism. I just was not very well mentally. And so it was hard for me to even leave my house. It got to the point that I was so paranoid that somebody was trying to steal my oldest son, Nixon, that I felt like I had to protect him at all costs. And that meant staying in my house forever and not leaving. It was really, really hard for me. And so now being at a place where I don't feel that anxiety and I'm just like enjoying motherhood and in a place where I never thought I would actually be, because motherhood for me for so long was just very grueling and very hard. And I don't know how much of that comes from just coming to terms with being adopted and the reality of grieving that. I don't think until I had my son was when I really started to grieve all that I had lost from adoption. And that's when I went and met my biological family. And at the time, my biological father, and by then my biological father had already passed away. So I never got to meet him. And it just is a lot of intense grief. And I feel like nothing of motherhood has come naturally to me at all. I feel like I've had to work for every single ounce of motherhood. I don't know, like it's been very, very hard and grueling. And so it's been such a great time to be in this place of actually enjoying it. And I don't think I've enjoyed motherhood at all until this point, really. Like, and part of it I think is because I have better mental health. But the other part of it, I think, is moving out of the country really has helped. In the US, kids are very much a burden, and that's just financially, it's very hard to have kids in the United States. Like, you just can't afford a lot of things. And I think that does make it hard when you're trying to continually find free things to do with your kids, because yeah, it just costs money. It costs a lot of money to have kids, and it costs a lot of time. And time really is money. So if you're both working parents, like my husband and I were, it felt like such an intense burden. And both of us were kind of in a place of like, why did we have kids? Why did we decide to do this? Like, this is nothing like what our parents or our church leaders taught us in Mormonism, what it was going to be like, because all of it has just been really grueling and really hard. And I think leaving the United States and having so much of that financial stress taken off of us has really led us to just be parents and be actually present and be able to enjoy this in a way that we never have. I've really enjoyed it, and I've really enjoyed being able to like afford the things that my kids need. I haven't talked about this a lot, and I probably won't talk about it much, but my oldest son does have ADHD. My husband also has ADHD. It's been a lot for my oldest son, Nixon, because he's had a lot of intervention ever since he was very little. You know, we did speech therapy, occupational therapy. We had him tested by a child psychologist. We also had him in early childhood development programs. But at the time, my husband and I were making a certain amount of money where we could get him on Medicaid to be able to cover those things. And that was when we lived in Idaho for a couple of years. And so we were able to get him on Medicaid to be able to pay for 2-3 times a week for speech therapy, occupational therapy. And then he was able to get into this early childhood development program so we could have help at home, and he could go to this preschool as well to help him get up to where his peers were at. And so when we moved to DC or Northern Virginia for 3.5 years before we came here to Kyrgyzstan, he went to school and they had those interventions and an IEP at his school. He had really progressed. And then we moved here to Kyrgyzstan, and we weren't aware that most international schools use the British system, and it's a year ahead of United States schools. And so it was just a lot. It was a lot moving here. It was very overwhelming because we realized how much occupational therapy was really helping him and supporting him. One thing that ADHD kids do is stimming, and we hadn't noticed him doing that in probably a couple of years, just because, again, he was in occupational therapy, he's on medication. And it's not a bad thing to stim, but it is a sign of just him trying to regulate himself. So we started to see these behaviors just become more and more intense. And then at school, there were a lot of issues, and learning that he was already behind and then seeing that they jumped ahead a year, it was just a really, really big mess. And we had not gotten him tested by psychologists since he was about 3 years old, because our primary care doctor wanted us to have him tested to be able to confirm or deny whether it was autism. We didn't really care either which way, right? We're fine with whatever. We just wanted to be able to have the resources and things to be able to help him the best that we could. And so now we move here, right? And it felt like everything kind of fell apart, and that he was having a really, really hard time. And we were having a really, really hard time because we were seeing a lot of behaviors and regression from where we were kind of like, did we make the wrong choice by moving to Kyrgyzstan? And I don't think that we did. And here's why. One of the things I'm going to talk about later on is the Foreign Service healthcare, because it is so similar to how healthcare is handled on Mormon missions for Mormon missionaries, except it's way better. I can tell that how healthcare is handled for Mormon missionaries was definitely taken from the Foreign Service healthcare. And so I want to get into a full episode of the similarities and differences and like the things that are really phenomenal. And I will say mostly for the Foreign Service healthcare, all I've seen is how phenomenal it has been for us. And so it's like seeing the things that Mormonism copied and took from this, but like made shittier. And one of those things is you have like regional doctors, and this is the same like on missions too, right? You have like regional doctors that are supposed to help you, and you have your healthcare through the Mormon church. Same with us. We have our healthcare through the United States government and who my husband's employed by, except it's way better. When we first moved here, for example, my son, Nixon, again, kept getting sick. He also has asthma. And at first I thought it was just anxiety because kids usually, if they're having anxiety, will complain of headaches and stomach aches and different things. But then his asthma started to act up and I could tell that he just like was not breathing well. So we took him into the health unit, which is just at the embassy, and they were able to determine that, you know, he has pneumonia. We got an X-ray, and it cost $10. I was like literally almost in tears how easy all of this was. And plus that's reimbursed. It was so quick. They gave us the medicine right then. And within a couple days, you know, he was feeling better. And I kept thinking like he has probably gotten pneumonia because he's gotten sick like that multiple times over the past couple of years. And we've just given him medicine because we couldn't afford to go to the doctor every time that he would get sick. And I think people with asthma are just prone more to upper respiratory viruses and different things. And so I'm sure that that's what he was getting. And the air quality in Kyrgyzstan is not great, but it also wasn't great when we lived in Utah, or probably a little better in Virginia, but still he was constantly getting sick. And within a day, it's resolved and we can afford it. And so back to what I was talking about with his ADHD and the stimming and other issues, we never got him tested again to see if it was autism or if it was specifically ADHD. We did a test with his primary care physician to determine that, like, yes, it is ADHD, but there's further testing that you can do to determine if your kid's like dyslexic, if it's autism, what type of ADHD it is, like if they're having trouble processing because they're not paying attention, or if they just really cannot process things. All these different things that I had no idea about. But again, we never got him tested again after being 3 years old because at the point that he needed to be tested again, we were making too much money to be able to still have him on Medicaid, but not enough money to afford this psychological testing to do more. And so since being in the Foreign Service, we found out that you can get all of this covered for your kids. And not only that, but they are going to send us to some of the best facilities in Dubai for him to be able to get this testing done so we can know exactly what it is and have a better game plan of like, how can we help him? Because the schooling specifically is where we're really noticing it. Just, of course, the whole British system and trying to jump ahead is really, really difficult, but also just like being able to retain information for reading, writing, and math has been really, really hard for him. And I've been working with him extra hard for him to get caught up, but like you can tell that it's just really, really hard for him to pay attention. Anyways, all that to say that, yeah, all of that is completely free. And I sit here wondering like how the United States can have this healthcare for its foreign service officers, but can't do this for all of its citizens as they're rolling back Medicaid and Medicare in the United States so that less people have access to it. I just am like dumbfounded. I'm grateful that my son's able to get help, but I also like am really sad that other people are suffering and like wondering why it has to be this way and why this can't be available to all American citizens and why it's only for this group of American citizens that are able to access this. Yeah. So it's been a little bit of a whirlwind living here. I've been little bit homesick just because I miss my friends and my family. I've made friends here, which has been so great. And I feel like the embassy community here in Kyrgyzstan has been so amazing. Like I've had so much fun. And I also am just like, it's up and down, very up and down. But it's all been good. And it was so fun, like I said, to be able to go to things that you wouldn't expect. So I tried ice cream, this fermented ice cream that is from horse's milk. I guess kumis is what it's called. It is like a traditional Kyrgyz uh drink, and it was really, really bad. 10 out of 10 would not recommend that you try it, guys. But I would recommend trying it for the experience, because now I can say that I've tried it. And unfortunately, it tastes just like it sounds. It was not good. But we did go to this festival, Jaichi Festival, which was in this like little village in the hills of Kyrgyzstan, which was also just so fun and so cool to see and so interesting to see all the culture. So a lot of people in Kyrgyzstan have never seen like Black people, because they're going to, live and die in their village, which is exactly how I thought I would be with Utah. And so it was so funny to have people like want to take pictures of me and my boys or videos of us because they have never seen a Black person. I get nervous because I remember as a kid growing up in Utah being one of so few Black people and but constantly being made fun of for different things and looked negatively at because I am a different color. And, it's something that people hadn't seen before. And instead of like embracing it and like being curious about it, it was seen as a negative thing. And I do think that has to do a lot with Mormon culture and Mormon teachings. But here, I'm the first Black person that they've ever met. And it's met with so much love and so much curiosity that I just like again, it almost makes me emotional because I'm like, you've never seen a Black person. I don't know why in the United States, well, I do know why in the United States that it's met with fear rather than curiosity, but here it was just met with so much love and admiration that I just like could not help but smile and just feel like this little local celebrity and be like, wow, I never would have gone to experience this type of love and just like beauty had I never gone to Kyrgyzstan to meet the Kyrgyz people and see how much they just like they love Black people. They love us so much here. Like it's just such a crazy thing to experience. I've never experienced something like this. I've always felt like in the United States, typically it's met with a lot of judgment and a lot of fear. And here it's like they keep telling me like, oh, your eyes are so beautiful. We want your eyes. Oh, your skin is so beautiful. Like I've always wanted that skin and your hair. Like they were complimenting me on my braids. Like it was so, so beautiful. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience that and that my kids get to experience that because it's just nothing that we would experience in the United States, and it's so fun to hear my kids say how much they love being Black. And we all should love being whatever color we are, we all should. And it's so amazing for my kids to be so proud of that because I didn't have that experience growing up. I did not love being Black at all. I definitely wanted to be white. And so it's just something that I don't know. I just feel like I'm smiling ear to ear because it's such a cool, wonderful experience to be here. I feel like so many people in my DMs were like, you have changed houses so many times, but it's only technically been like 3 or 4 times. So when you move from the United States, while our apartment was being packed up, we had to stay in an Airbnb for a couple of weeks. So that was our first move of all of our stuff. And then when we flew out here, our house wasn't ready, but we were in the same neighborhood that we still currently are in. So the house that we stayed in for that time was just temporarily while the people in this house that we're in now moved out so that they could repaint it and all of that. And then we moved in. And so about 3 times we've moved from place to place, but this is like going to be where we stay for the rest of our time in Kyrgyzstan. And maybe I'll do a little house tour. I get really worried about safety just in general. I get worried about showing my kids. So typically I try not to like show their faces if I post pictures, or I'll do it like with close friends and with videos and stuff. And then like where we live, I like want to show people because it's so gorgeous. And I don't think people would expect that, especially when I was moving here. When I tell friends that I'm moving to Kyrgyzstan, they'd be like, where the fuck is Kyrgyzstan? And I'd be like, I don't know. I'm just learning as well. But it is so gorgeous and it is so fun. And I just feel like our neighborhood, like every time I walk outside, I just smile because I just am like, I cannot believe I live here. And it's so funny because I've had videos like get a little bit of traction and like get hate from, active Mormons being like, I bet you live on food stamps, how's your government housing? And it's so funny because technically I do live in government housing. This is paid for by their taxes and my taxes, your taxes, right? To live in such a nice house, and your food paid for by their taxes and all this nice stuff. He's like, technically, yeah, I guess I do live on government program and proud of it because this is a gorgeous house. So lucky to live here. Everything just about Kyrgyzstan is so beautiful. And again, so grateful to be so embraced by the Kyrgyz people because it's so funny that they think I'm so gorgeous and our kids are so gorgeous because I feel the same way about them. And I never would have thought that people would, just love other races so much. Because typically I feel like in the US, we're taught that people outside of the US are racist too, like blah, blah, which I know is true. But like, as far as Kyrgyz people go, they love Black people and definitely are not racist. So that's my little update. And now I want to get into the main bulk of this episode, Mormon wedding receptions and bridal showers. Like I said at the beginning, we're not going to get into bachelorette parties because the general consensus from a lot of people was that bachelorette parties are just not a big thing in Mormon culture because of, the negative connotations with them. And typically, if you're going to do a bachelorette party, it's just like a little girls' night. I didn't really do a bachelorette party. I feel like I had like a bridal shower / bachelorette party with like just friends that I really, really loved, where they got me gifts that were like spicy without my parents being there. But I'm excited to get into the depths of all of this and get into some of the things that you sent. So let's first, before we get into the wedding reception part, break down just Mormon weddings in general typically are done in a Mormon temple. So unless you are also Mormon with a temple recommend, you won't be able to see Mormon brides and grooms get married because it's done in the temple. And I feel like I'll link some episodes because I know that like Haley Rawl from Girls Camp has done some episodes on Mormon temples, and if there's interest, I'll do like a temple wedding episode, but it's pretty generic and basic. Like I've gone into some detail on other episodes, like with Eden, we go over the temple ceremony, but like you get supposedly sealed for time and all eternity in the temple. There's this like altar that you and your husband kneel over and hold hands, and the sealer guy who apparently has the power to seal you together for time and all eternity. And then they have these mirrors that are facing each other, so it looks like when you stand together that you go on forever and ever. Pretty generic, and it's really just you're vowing to obey your husband during that. At least the time when I went through, I vowed to obey my husband, and you're kind of signing up for polygamy. It's thinly veiled that like that's the intention of it. If you read D&C 132, which is a Mormon book written by Joseph Smith and like all his prophecies written down. D&C 132, it talks about the new and everlasting covenant. But if you don't know, the new and everlasting covenant was also polygamy that was very secretive during that time. And so it goes back and forth of whether people are like, no, we don't practice polygamy anymore. Technically, in the eternities, in Mormonism, they do still practice polygamy. And all of those prophets that got sealed to multiple wives are still sealed to those multiple wives. So polygamy is definitely in Mormonism's celestial kingdom. And there is also the caveat now that men in Mormonism can get sealed to multiple women, but women cannot be sealed to multiple men. So it just goes to show that polygamy is definitely an eternal thing within Mormonism. As far as bridal showers go, though, I have never been, I've been to 2 bridal showers in my lifetime that were not Mormon bridal showers. And they were so much fun. Like, I can't even describe to you how much more fun a bridal shower outside of Mormonism was compared to like Mormon bridal showers. And I don't know what it was. Like, I'm trying to think of like what specifically made it so much fun. The last one I went to was for my friend Dean, who was marrying his husband, and they were both there. And it was just the funniest bridal shower. We all went around and like talked about how we knew Dean and like shared stories, how we knew Dean and Lee is his husband. We talked about how we knew them and shared funny stories about them. It was just like so intimate and personal, and like I loved getting to know like their friends and family, and like I don't know how to explain it. Like, we just all came together and laughed, and like I cried a little bit because it was just so fun and beautiful, and none of it was really focused at all around the sex part. Whereas in Mormonism, sometimes bridal showers can be really, not just bridal showers, but the actual wedding reception, which we'll get into, can be really focused on the sex part, because there's this assumption that you're supposed to be virgins. So most of the time people are virgins. I did not happen to be a virgin. I broke the Mormon rules, and my husband and I were sleeping together before we got married, which was a big no-no. But typically you are virgins. And so a lot of things are around you finally getting to sleep with somebody. And typically at Mormon bridal showers, it's just women. The men are not there at all. Whereas ones that I've gone to for non-Mormons, it's men and women at the bridal shower, and it was just a ton of fun. The gift giving part is the main thing that I feel like revolves around sex within bridal showers and Mormonism in general, because typically at a bridal shower, instead of like the bachelorette party, you are getting these gifts that are so cringy, like what you would typically get at a bachelorette party, like lingerie, like the Karma Sutra for sex, and like all these different things you're getting at your bridal shower in front of like your mima and mom and mother-in-laws. Like, it can be really embarrassing. Like I said, for me personally, I had a separate little bachelorette / bridal shower with just my friends. Whitney from Secret Lives actually threw it for me. And so I did get all of those gifts then, but I still got like lingerie at my bridal shower, which was it was so embarrassing. Even though I was already having sex with my husband at the time, it was still just like so awkward and uncomfortable to be able to be getting that a bridal shower. And the books that you can, sometimes it's like homemaker stuff, which is typical, but I have to talk about the books because there's 2 specific books that I remember being really, really big during the time I was getting married. I don't know if this is still a thing, but typically they are given at Mormon bridal showers, or you can get it like at your wedding reception. A Latter-day Saints Guide to Lovemaking. Oh my God, I'm cringing just reading that. And the authors are just called Earthly Parents because it's anonymous by an LDS couple. Isn't this so cringe? This one's a new one though, because it was published in 2019. And so I've been seeing this one go around. It's very like a candid practical guide for LDS couples and newlyweds. And it goes over like all of sex education, but like from the gospel view. So I feel like it's kind of like general conference meets sex ed. The only thing that made it more cringy for me was the fact that like none of us really got sex ed. And I know people argue that sex ed is, supposed to be by your parents. Like, don't expect that to come from your church or school. But the thing is, our church influenced our parents to not teach us sex ed. And the fact that our parents felt more comfortable sending us to the bishop to be asked about chastity, which in Mormonism has everything to do with sex, or to be taught in young men's or young women's all about the no-nos of touching somebody else or touching yourself. Like, you're already in the grounds for sex ed right there. And so if you're going to talk about chastity or purity culture, or, staying a virgin until you're married, then it should be talked about that you have sex ed. And you're also going to church so much within Mormonism, right? We have seminary every other day from ninth grade until your senior year. You also have young men's and young women's, which is on Wednesday. And then you have church, which used to be 3 hours. Now it's only 2 on Sunday. And then if you grew up in Utah like I did, then the education system and sex ed in school is dictated by the Mormon church. And so again, you're just not getting any sex ed. If the church doesn't feel like it's okay to teach sex ed, then why would they think that if they're influencing our parents, that they would feel like it's okay for them to teach sex ed to their kids? My mom and dad, like, I don't think I had one conversation as I was going into like 6th grade about sex, and it was so convoluted and so abstract that I still don't understand what they were trying to say to this day. But we do have a thing that's called maturation in Utah. Like, it's like a play on, maturing, where they will one night, it's like after you've graduated 5th grade, you'll go and they'll teach you all about your period. I don't think they go into any sex. It's just about like your period. But even then, that was so confusing to me because I did not realize that I would actually bleed out of my vagina once a month. I did not understand that this was going to happen inside of my body and I was going to be bleeding, that this is like what they were trying to tell me, because there was no steps up to getting there, right? And one thing that's so funny is that within Mormonism, people think it's like really perverted to teach your kids about their autonomy, and like think that's like going to make them want to have sex as like children and will make them more vulnerable to like predators. But it's actually the exact opposite. If you start with educating them, that's going to be the biggest protection. I mean, it's not full safe, right? Like, we can't account for everything that happens to our kids. And sometimes people are horrible people and are able to get access to your kids. But there's so much, I feel like, that I didn't realize I could be doing to help protect my kids. And if something were to happen, that they would not hold the shame or the stigma that comes along with being sexually assaulted. And so part of that is teaching them anatomy, and so that they know the correct terms. That is a very good deterrent for predators, is when your kids know the actual terms. And yes, at least for me, it has been a little bit hard because my kids, they want to laugh and think that like it's funny to say penis or vagina or vulva, like think that's funny. But it's also, I feel like I teach them the gravity of like, look, we don't joke about this. We don't go and yell this outside, right? Like, this is very serious. Anyways, back to this book, this guide by our earthly parents. I think it does a good job of covering sex education that we should have had. It goes over things like anatomy, desire for play, female pleasure, male pleasure, lubrication, and of course the wedding night, which I'm going to have a whole episode about Mormon wedding nights and premarital exams, because that's some craziness in Mormonism as well. And one of the things that is really good about it is like a lot of LDS therapists are suggesting this book because it's very frank and open and clinically accurate, is what they say about sex. A therapist suggests it because it goes beyond just like, the 6th grade birds and bees, but it's not pornographic, because that's a huge no-no within Mormon culture, is pornography. And so that's why we weren't shown like in actual health class the anatomy of male and female. It was like Ken doll and Barbie doll, because they felt like it was pornographic. And so again, I don't think you can even associate autonomy with pornography at all, because they're just so two separate things. But because we were raised so strictly that it's like, you have to be careful, like this is pornographic, this is not pornographic. It's like, anything can be pornographic, and some things are just atomically correct, and you're going to have to get over that with yourself. And so it talks about the transition from chastity to sexual intimacy. So it talks about like quotes of what they'd wish they'd known with like clinical guidance, and really fills in the sex ed gaps for us conservative LDS people who just never got that sex ed. And I would say that like this book would not be such a big thing if sex ed was being taught by parents within LDS culture, right? So I feel like just this book being published and becoming such a big deal within the LDS community shows that like sex ed is still not something that is covered at all. But their main thing is like they remain gospel centered while teaching true intimacy skills within the LDS doctrine. That is yikes for me. I feel like one thing that I think is really good is they do teach about like orgasms and the mechanics for both men and women, and talking about like frequency and desire mismatch and consent and mutual respect, which is huge. I'm shocked that that's in an LDS publication, that consent and mutual respect are in that. And they talk about masturbation within marriage, because they do talk about how some women will need to stimulate their clitoris in order for the female orgasm. It says, this is like a paraphrase quote that I got it from it. It says, the wife may need to masturbate herself during intercourse in order to climax. And I know that is so cringy, but for those of us who grew up in Mormonism, like that was such a no-no for me during sex for like literally 8 years of my marriage. Even now, I still have a hard time like touching myself or masturbating during sex, because of how much it was drilled into our head how horrible masturbation was and how wrong it was to touch yourself. Literally, we were taught that touching yourself was like self assault, which is wild. And so in this book, it talks about how it's okay to do that. It also, one of the quotes is, ejaculation is a release, but orgasm is a full body experience. I just thought that was so interesting. Now it's like such a big thing within the LDS community, and you would probably get that at your bridal shower, is a little bit cringy. But let's get into the book that I got at my bridal shower. What typically we were all given was They Were Not Ashamed: Strengthening Marriage Through Sexual Fulfillment. This is by a Laura Brotherson. She was a licensed marriage and family therapist, LDS. It started publication in 2004. And so this is what most of us like millennials, I feel like, got, was this book. It goes into like a holistic comprehension of spiritual, physical intimacy within marriage. But it really focuses on female sexuality, because typically when it comes to just marriage in general in Mormonism, men are allowed to be sexual, and constantly when you're in Young Men Seeing Women's, they're talking about how men have issues with pornography and men have issues with masturbation, but like females don't have that. Women are not typically allowed within Mormonism to be sexual. A lot of women, once they get married, will find out that they have vaginisma, which is where you're unable to have intercourse, because it quite literally is a result from purity culture, because women are not able to relax enough or to be mentally there in order to relax their pelvic floor to have sex. And I think that's just because of being raised that, you know, your sexuality doesn't matter. So this book was huge, because finally women are feeling like, oh, this is so helpful for my sexuality. Specifically, when I mean women, is LDS women are like, whoa, this is huge. And so it's like, this book was given to everyone at bridal showers when it came out. I would say it's more of like a Relief Society version of sex, because it's very reverent, it's very spiritual, it speaks to both men and women on like the female experience, and talking about like open communication, and it blends a lot of clinical insight with Mormon theology and scripture. How fun that sex is with Mormon theology and scripture. And we're always taught like the triangle, that it's like you, your husband, and God. And my husband would get so mad at me, because I'd always be like, I'm so happy that God's here to like watch us get off. Like, so weird. It talks about the challenges of purity culture and how the messaging is damaging, which is very surprising. It also goes over like how to get in the mood and dealing with the shame of purity culture and communicating with your spouse and strengthening your marriage through emotional and sexual connection. One of the things, and the thing that I don't love about it, is it has language like prepare yourself to give to your husband, or a virtuous wife will embrace her role in the marriage bed, which is just really, really cringy. And it really is pretty sexist book because it often like centers sex as a duty or spiritual obligation, especially for women. And it still is really soaked in purity culture because it talks about like how this is like women fulfilling their divine role because, you know, it's part of God's plan for our bodies to like have babies and to engage in this intimacy with our husbands. It takes sex and it makes it into the weirdest, like cringiest, abstract thing. It's an outer body experience because now it's not something for your pleasure or for joy, but it's for God and it's your duty. This is some of the quotes that are paraphrased from this book. One is, your husband may feel rejected when you don't want sex. Prepare yourself to give. So it talks about even when you're not in the mood to have sex, how it's almost like a virtuous sacrifice to still do that. It says lovemaking is the glue of marriage, as vital as prayer or scripture study. And just really making it like a duty within LDS marriages to have sex with your husband, and very much giving Handmaid's Tale, might I add. Like very, very weird. Another one is, do not expect to feel desire before choosing to act lovingly, which is another one that it's like, if you're not in the mood, like you need to choose to be in the mood. Don't love that. And I should do a whole episode just on these two books, breaking them down, but they're just peak Mormon wedding culture gifts. I feel like seeing that like gives such a good insight into Mormon sex culture and bridal showers in general. The fact that you're getting those at a bridal shower can be very uncomfortable. And it doesn't slip my mind that like at my non-member friends' bridal showers, there was no discussion of sex, intimacy, or anything. But at every single Mormon bridal shower that I've ever gone to, there's always something to do with sex, whether that's, you know, gifting someone lingerie, gifting someone one of these books. Like it is so centered around sex and losing your virginity and your duty as now a wife. And, you know, automatically like you need to get on it with having children and becoming a mother. And I think that puts a little bit of a damper on bridal showers because it's not focused on just like the love of the couple and how beautiful that is. Whereas non-Mormon bridal showers, like it was so focused on like these two people falling in love and like creating a beautiful life. There was no talk of children or any of that. It was just so focused on like their story of how they came together and their love, and it was just so much fun. Okay. Now we have to get into just Mormon wedding receptions in general, because they can be also very, very boring. I remember seeing on TikTok, and this happens a lot on TikTok, where you can tell somebody's like a Mormon bride. There was this one clip of a girl and her husband going to, I think, Sodalicious. After they got married in the temple, before their reception, they went to Sodalicious, and like people were like, whoa, this is like so anticlimactic, like on your wedding day, like so weird. And Mormon like receptions in general, like the pinnacle is going to the temple. So the reception is just, even then, not as big a deal as the actual temple, because all that matters is the time in all eternity part of the wedding. And so the receptions typically a lot of times can be held in Mormon church buildings, which if you've ever seen a Mormon church building, it is a little bit cringy. They decorate the church gym to as best as they can, but you know, there's still a basketball hoop hanging down. The carpeted walls are still really gross. I've seen some do it as best they can, but like it's typically low budget is for weddings. Like it's not that big a deal because the most important part was the temple. And so people typically, there's the receiving line, which is, I did not realize is not very typical of most non-Mormon weddings. The two that I've gone to had no receiving line for non-Mormon weddings, whereas every Mormon wedding I've gone to has had a receiving line. And that was like a big deal at my wedding because I was like, I don't really want to do this. And I remember my mom and mother-in-law being like, this is so important. Like, we need the receiving line. How are you going to say thank you to all of the guests, you know? And you invite like literally everyone you've ever known, so many people, and nobody like RSVPs or anything. It's so much more casual. And most of the time you're not feeding people. So there's just like snacks and stuff there, which is another thing that is totally different from, you know, non-Mormon weddings, because typically everyone who's coming is getting a full meal. So again, very, very different. The other weddings that I went to that were non-Mormon, again, were so much more intimate because it was the closest people that you knew or grew up with, versus just inviting everyone to, you know, come have some so delicious cookies and some soda pop at your reception line. I will say for my Mormon wedding, it was very important for me not to get married, or it was really important for me not to have our reception at a church building because that was just like major cringe for me. Also, like the budget is so small for Mormon weddings because you're so young. So you're not paying for it yourself. Your parents typically are. And typically they have multiple kids. Like there's lots of people who get married and it's like if they have 7, 8 kids, then it's every year they're having a wedding and they're not wanting to spend, $10 grand for each wedding. So typically the budget is around like $3,000 to $5,000. So really, really cheap. My husband and I did get married at the governor's mansion because, again, we had slept with each other before we got married. And at the time, his uncle was the governor of Utah, Governor Gary Herbert. I'm sure people have feelings on that. But so he let us get married at the mansion because they were there. And I felt like that was so beautiful. And I loved that way more than getting married at the Mormon temple. I also got sealed there later on. And I felt like I wish I would have actually enjoyed my wedding. I spent so much of my wedding day feeling so bad that I wasn't getting married in a temple that I did not get to see like truly how beautiful it was where we got married. We still had a Mormon bishop marry us, which again I regret. I wish I would have just had a friend do it, but it was really beautiful. I remember when I finally got sealed to my husband, like being like, oh, finally, like we did it. Like this is so much bigger than like our wedding. And I remember like friends who weren't able to like make it to the actual wedding being like, don't worry, come to the sealing. Like that's more important. And now again, you have those regrets of, man, I wish that like I would have made this more important. But either way, it's can't go back in time. Maybe we'll do something in the future. The receptions typically are, just very dull and very not a big deal within Mormonism at all. I feel like in general, Mormon wedding receptions are really weird, sweet, chaotic, but they are also really revealing of Mormon culture in general, along with Mormon bridal showers. Like it really shows the culture in full force versus just now I'm going to get into some of the submissions. I wanted to hear all of your stories about your bridal showers and receptions and Mormon wedding receptions. So let's dive into oral traditions. This one says, at the end of the reception, we were all outside waiting to greet the newlyweds as they came outside to their decorated car and head to their honeymoon. The reception was held at a church gym, of course. Right as the couple started heading for the doors to leave the building, a local member dad and his 3 sons jumped in front of them to clean the glass doors and adjacent windows. They were there to clean the church and didn't want to wait 30 seconds. For like 3 minutes, we're all standing out there watching these guys clean the glass with the married couple standing awkwardly in the background. It was so surreal, like living a sitcom episode or something. When they were finally done, they opened the doors for the couple and stayed there standing and smiling with these guys in jeans with spray bottles and rags and are in the photos. Still can't believe it. LOL. That would make me so mad. And you know that they were probably so nice about it because they were Mormon and not saying anything of like, get the fuck out of the way. You're ruining the fucking pictures. You can wait until we're done. But the fact that they kept going because they didn't want to wait, like start somewhere else. Go around the other side of the church and start on those fucking windows. Why do you have to do it while they're walking out? And the fact that the couple just stood there like waiting, like too nice. I would have raged. I would have freaking raged. This one says the reception had been going on for several hours now, and almost everyone had eaten, said their goodbyes, and left. Even most of their close family. Cleanup had begun. The couple would not leave. They were awkwardly holding hands and avoiding conversation and eye contact with each other. The groom was sweating profusely. His mom had to say something like, okay, we're turning off the lights soon, before they would get up to be awkwardly shuffled into a car. Then the groom tried to get in the front seat instead of sharing the back with his bride. The 7 to 8 of us who were left cheered them on, but as it pulled away, even his true believing family was shaking their heads and trying not to laugh at them. Poor kids. Oh my gosh. I can only imagine. Like, I remember on my wedding day, like being so frustrated with all like the little comments that people would make. Luckily, my husband and I were not virgins at the time because we had already been sleeping together, but like it goes one of two ways. It's either people are very like tight-lipped, like don't be inappropriate, don't talk about sex, like be, straight and narrow here. Or it's the other way where they're decorating your car with like penises and just like going quite literally balls to the walls with the sex stuff. Like I've seen it go really both ways, and it depends on kind of what type of Mormon you were raised with or like how your parents were. Because I have seen some Mormon weddings where like the bride will do like a dance, like a little sexy dance for the husband, and do like the reception, they'll do a dance and they'll do like the garter toss, and the guy will like get the garter with his teeth and drag it down. I've seen others where none of that happens. At mine, I did not do the garter toss, did not want to do that. I don't think I did that. Maybe I did. I don't know. I don't remember, but I did do the bouquet toss, but I was just like, I don't want to talk about sex because I was so ashamed that we had slept with each other before we had gotten married. And so I was just like, don't talk about it. Don't. And I was so happy to see that my car was not decorated with like penises. It just was like really cute, just married. I have to thank my sister for that, for doing that and not making it weird. But I felt so uncomfortable with like the expectation of like, you need to have sex now, even though it's like, I've already had sex. I'm not a virgin. So like, but I also felt like weird, like, oh, now it's not special because I'm like not a virgin. But I thank God, oh my God, thank you, God, that I was not a virgin, because when we get into Mormon wedding nights, like there are absolute horror stories. And most of my friends have a lot of horror stories. And I didn't have to experience that. Me and my husband, we didn't even have sex the night of our wedding because we were too tired. And it felt so awesome to just like be okay with that and not feel that pressure at all. Oh, this poor couple. They were probably, I don't know. It sounds like neither of them were excited to have sex at all. This one's about a bridal shower. It says, at a roommate's bridal shower, I told her beforehand I was buying her lingerie, so if she wasn't comfortable opening it in front of her grandma and future mother-in-law, to open it before or after. She said they'd be fine with it. Well, she pulled out the lace red panties, and a grandmother exclaims, those are Satan's panties. Honestly, it was worth her opening the gift in front of all to hear that. Satan's panties. Oh my gosh. A lot of people don't realize this, but like, because Mormons wear garments, they think that like you have to wear those all the time. But swimming, like sweating, if you're like exercising, like the 3 reasons why you wouldn't have to wear your garments, but you literally have to go change into your lingerie, because it's not like you're wearing it all day, these sexy underwear. Like you go and change into it just to have it taken off because you're supposed to be in your garments before. But yeah, garments are not sexy. And I'm sure that's why she said those are Satan's panties, because you're supposed to be in your garments, grandma. One of my friends was getting married, and her aunt, who married very late in life and kind of projected herself onto her niece, my friend, gave my friend the lingerie she, the aunt, used on her wedding night. The lingerie was a full sleeve silk nightgown that covered from neck to mid calf and had many lace ruffles. The gift was given at the bachelorette party in front of all the other guests. My friend was so sweet and gracious to her aunt, but there were definitely some what faces, especially because her aunt talked about the importance of still maintaining modesty within the marriage. Oh my God. Handy down lingerie. Oh my God, no. And the fact that she like needs it to be modest, I don't know if that is like the best representation of purity culture there is for the needing to maintain modesty within marriage, that the lingerie even has to be modest. Oh my God. Ew. Ooh. Ugh. That would be so gross. And I don't know if it makes it worse that it's the aunt, that it's like, we're not even like close. Or if it was the mother-in-law, like either way, it's just weird. Do not do hand-me-down lingerie. That's so fucking weird. As with anyone who grew up as a member, I heard marriage talked about in church a lot. And when they talked about it in church, they would talk about things like temples and eternal marriage and finding a good partner and the importance of maintaining temple worthiness so I could one day be married there. I grew up, went to a singles ward, and was even worse. So I had this expectation that weddings would be centered around eternal families and the temple and all that good stuff. Well, I work in weddings now, and after attending several hundred weddings with a healthy mix of Mormon and non-Mormon, I'm here to report that Mormon weddings are centered around sex. And it's honestly sad. In non-Mormon weddings, the focus is on the couples and how in love they are and how the relationship got them to this point. For Mormons, the whole day, people are making jokes about how the couple is going to lose their virginity and what they'll be doing after the reception. The only couples who aren't that way are the super stuffy ones who are probably either A, going to start sex with a prayer, and B, not sure how sex works. This is part of why I think the law of chastity is so wrong. I actually think it's a generally good principle to only have sex with people you love and care about and who share those feelings for you. But I can't tell you how many couples I see who started dating 4 to 8 months before their wedding, and it's so adamantly clear that even if they're in love with each other, they are only getting married so quickly to have sex. It really bums me out. Yeah, that's exactly like my same experience that I was talking about. Like, it's just so centered around that it makes it not as fun and just not as like big of deal. Just in general, like I know in Mormonism and outside of Mormonism, people get divorced a lot, but I think that it just seems very shallow. All the things that we were taught that like we do this so that like we're not just like centered around sex, like we're not just like centered around like so that you can stay safe, like it actually like has done the exact opposite. And it's just crazy to me that like people don't see that and still fight so hard to defend the way things are and to keep things the same, and how they're not seeing that like, oh, this is making it so it is only centered on sex, oh, this is making it so sexual assault is happening at a higher rate. Like I just don't understand. This one's talking about like what you wear. It's like for Mormon wedding receptions are typically at a church building. It's more like an open house more than anything. Business casual to nice dressing. There's no formal dressing or anything. Don't expect dinner, but there will be a lot of snacks. Probably no dancing, definitely no booze. Lots of people sitting at tables looking both proper and bored in equal measure. That's so true. And sometimes there's fun dancing. Like we had music going, but like nobody was really up dancing. I did do a dance with like my dad. My husband did a dance with his mom, but like it wasn't like vibing, popping. Like most people were just like talking and eating, and like there's not a lot of dancing going on because I don't know. I don't know if we're just like too scared to like look silly, or if we all just don't know how to dance. That could be it as well. But like usually, even if the dancing is going on, I've seen lots of like Mormon wedding reception videos, and it's just like really cringy, weird. I don't know. It's just a Mormon thing. I distinctly remember attending the receptions following marriages of siblings presumed to be good Mormon virgins. I know what they'll be doing tonight was the phrase I heard the most. It came most often from the mouths of snickering LDS members. Therefore, when I got married, there was no immediate reception afterwards. Straight from the temple steps, we went off for our honeymoon. Everyone else, they could wait a week for their little party and stuff the stupid comments back in their faces and swallow them. That was a good idea. That was a really good idea to do that because it does get awkward. It can be so uncomfortable. Like I said, like we had already slept with each other and I felt so uncomfortable. This one is talking about a bridal shower. It says, our son is getting married in a month and my wife attended the first bridal shower. My true believing mother uses this opportunity to push her personal agenda of bringing us back into the fold and gives them an LDS book on intimacy, along with a whole explanation of what a great book it is and how she can't wait to attend their sealing in a year. This one is so awkward. I'm assuming they've all left the Mormon church, so it's like awkward that they're getting a Mormon intimacy book, and I'm pretty sure that it's probably the one that I talked about, and it was very good, A Latter-day Saints Guide to Lovemaking. Again, I'm gonna have to do a whole episode on this because wild. He actually included a little more context. We left the church a few years ago. My son is an RM, but he and his amazing fiance have left, lived together, and are not getting married in the temple and have no plans to. The best part about the whole thing was when my wife saw what the gift was, she blurted out, "Wow, I can't believe it's that thick." So true. I think it's that book because it's a pretty big book. Yeah, so funny. Okay, this one, a couple more, and then went to a wedding shoot in late. His mother-in-law bought the bride a very modest lingerie set, a little sheer, short, but still really stayed. The bride was horrified, blushing, embarrassed, close to tears, and you could tell scared to death. So sad. Everyone was so uncomfortable. Yeah, so embarrassing. I think something that makes me laugh a lot at Mormon weddings is when they keep the tradition of the garter toss. The older generation is freaking out when the groom chooses to use their teeth to remove the garter while under the wife's dress. That is true. I have seen some that are like so spicy to music and it's just like so awkward. Like, save that for your bedroom. Anyways, thank you so much for being here with me on this episode, getting into all about bridal showers and Mormon wedding receptions. And if you'd like to follow along, you can follow me at Potty Mouth Podcast. If you'd like to follow along, you can follow me at Pouty Mouth Podcast on Instagram and at Tara M. Herbert on TikTok. I do have a Discord community as well. Lost Girls, you can follow along. The link's in my bio, anywhere you follow me on social media. And you can subscribe to our newsletter if you want to get updates about new episodes and make sure you never miss out on submitting your answers to questions for episodes. Super happy to have you here. Next week, we are going to be talking about premarital exams and wedding nights. So I will post that so you'll be able to write about your premarital exams and wedding nights. Thank you so much for being here. Make sure to leave a review. That's super helpful, and have a great rest of your week.
Hello? Yeah, I'll tell him. Hey sinners, it's your fucking prophet speaking. God says that we actually came from her vagina, not Adam's rib. God wants us to address her as that bitch now in all prayers and legal documents. Did you know that John has a twink on the side? Olivia doesn't even know. Oh my god, I